Hello, and welcome back to Designed by Wingnut Social. I'm Liz Potarazu, CEO and principal designer of LP & Co., a residential and commercial office interior design firm based in the DC area. So as you might have noticed, I am not Darla Powell, Grand Poobah and head Wingnut at Wingnut Social, but I am filling in for her. But I am a client of Wingnut Social, and I've also been a guest on the podcast as well. So thanks for joining me. So today we talk to Sugey Piedra. She is the co-founder of Prominence Business and Wealth Management. And we really got into some tax strategies, which is super interesting. So we discussed some tax write-offs that you might not have heard of before, like the Augusta rule, and how actually not scary the IRS is. So Sugey Piedra is the co-founder of Prominence Business and Wealth Management. As an enrolled agent and 20 plus year certified tax preparer, Sugey Piedra likes to make her clients' money work for them so that they don't have to work forever. In her daily work as co-founder of Prominence Business and Wealth Management, Sugey supports high-earning, service-based business owners achieve long-term wealth through a holistic approach to financial services, providing bookkeeping, tax preparation, financial planning, and tax strategy under one roof. So Wingnuts, help me in welcoming Sugey Piedra to the show. All right. Hello, Wingnuts. Today I am with Sugey Piedra. She is the co-founder of Prominence Business and Wealth Management. So welcome, Sugey. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. This is, such a great opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely grateful for you because I think we're going to learn a lot of things that are not necessarily in a interior designer's wheelhouse. So we're excited to learn more. So tell me a little bit more about Prominence Business and Wealth Management and what it is that you do.
Of course. And I cut it short. I just say Prominence Business, because It is a long name. It is a big mouthful. But so I am a co-founder of the business. My sisters and I, we founded this business 6 years ago. And what we do is we added a twist to taxes. What we do is we do tax planning. So just like, your interior design takes planning in order for it to turn out as beautiful as you want it, we want our tax returns to turn out as we want them to turn out. And we want all the tax savings and all of that good stuff in there, strategies to be thrown in there, so that at the end, we get the result that we want, the result that we're hoping for. And so all of that is done through planning. And so we plan during the current calendar year for things like that. So my sisters and I, when we started the business, we just kept seeing when we worked for other companies. I've worked for a CPA many years, and I've been doing taxes for over 20 years. So I just kept seeing the same clients come in with the same headaches, the same fears, the same mistakes were being made. And it's because no one was really taking the time to explain to them, hey, if you change this or if you tweak that, next year your tax return will look a little different, or you'll have more savings, or, just a change will happen instead of dreading the same thing over and over. So I figured that the only way to start those changes is by starting my own business and taking time with clients to educate them a little bit more.
Okay, that's awesome. So it sounds like you are more of a tax strategist versus a tax preparer. Would you say that's true?
That's definitely true. I didn't know that title even existed or what it really was until not that long ago, when I'm like, it's just, I don't just prepare taxes, I'm really designing them to be different. I'm helping clients create something that is beneficial to them, it's beneficial to their company, and then it allows them to, put more into the company themselves to create more wealth or more income streams.
Okay, so it sounds like you're working with clients year-round versus just getting everything ready for that April 15th deadline.
That's correct. That's the
Okay.
best thing to do is, and like you said, maybe designers don't have that in their wheelhouse, or small business owners, because I just feel like anybody who has a business, it doesn't matter whether it's, somebody who's designing or somebody who's in construction or whatever. We all have a business. Even if we work for somebody, if you're a W-2 earner, we feel that, oh, there's no hope. There's definitely hope. You just have to work with somebody that's going to help you figure out what strategies you're, eligible for, and then apply them. Or if this, maybe you're looking for a strategy and it says, well, you can't participate in this strategy until you are a square. Well, what does it take for me to be a square, right? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? And then you become that so that now you're eligible for that strategy. So it's a lot of work behind the scenes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know as interior designers, most of us probably start off as solopreneurs, and maybe that's an
Yes.
LLC. And then kind of, navigating the road to S Corp and beyond,
Mhm.
I think is definitely, helpful. Like, what do we want our businesses to be when they grow up? And
Right.
how can that be advantageous from a tax standpoint? So yeah, I mean, that would definitely be helpful. I can completely understand that. So I know that one of the things that you wanted to discuss were some tax tips for interior designers to keep more money in our pockets.
For sure.
I'm sure we would love to hear that. So what are
Well,
they?
I mean, you covered a couple things, especially of looking at the entity. A lot of the times there's no one that we can really call and ask in certain questions, right? Now with social media, there's a lot of good, maybe YouTube videos and stuff, but how do you know that fits for you, right? And so we want to make sure that when you are looking at your entity structure, if it's the right time for you to incorporate, is it the right time for you to become an S corporation? When we talk about corporations and entities, they have two sides. They have the entity side, which is the legal side of it, and then they have the tax side. So for legal, you want it for protection, you want it for maybe the name, and you want it so that no one else takes, maybe that name or that logo or whatever. But then on the other side, you want to make sure that you're utilizing for tax purposes. And so when is it the right time for you to transition over to an entity? And if you are an entity, is it the right entity for you and your business for the amount of money that you're bringing in? So every entity has a really cool things that tools that allow you to utilize depending on how much you're making. So I always tell clients is make sure that, you get that reviewed, or that you sit down with your tax preparer, your tax planner, to make sure you're in the right entity for the type of business you're running and for the amount of earnings that you're making. But as far as, actual tax savings, I just tell clients all the time, make sure that you take the time to review your financials. So keeping track of your bookkeeping, keeping track of your numbers. A lot of times we keep track of those numbers only because of tax season, right? So I can't prepare a tax return for you until you give me the amount of money you brought in and all the expenses that went back out. Well, you do it in such a rush. You do it in a hurry because it's April 15th kind of a deal, and you really don't want to deal with it. You dread doing your numbers. So you kind of forget things. You forget what you did last January. You forget what you bought last February. And so all of a sudden you're leaving write-offs on the table. Sometimes you're like, well, I just want this done. So let me just throw, something together and just be done with it. So when that happens is we leave a lot of good things that we should have taken. For example, very common things that people forget are things like their subscriptions. Sometimes we subscribe to, certain apps or certain things, and we pay with it with our personal credit card because I don't know, maybe we didn't have the business at that point, or we started it and we didn't have the business credit card. So we're leaving a lot of write-offs on the personal side because we're commingling. So we want to make sure there's no commingling, that all your business expenses are running through the business account, and that you don't use your personal account for those business expenses, not just because the IRS could disallow them, but also because we forget about them. And you should be getting the write-off for all of those things. A lot of the times people would be like, well, I did buy a printer, but I can't find the receipt. I'm gonna look for it. Oh, well, it ended up being in, their Target credit card. And so therefore it's on the personal side. They forgot about it. So those are the kind of things that end up happening when our accounting is not in order. Our bookkeeping is a little messy. So I recommend, and if you go to my website, you can download a month-to-month Excel spreadsheet that allows you to keep track of your expenses on a monthly basis. How much money came in, and how much of expenses went out. Where did all the money go? One of the things clients will always say is, I can't believe I made that much money this year, and it's because we don't really keep track on a monthly basis. We're not really realizing how much money is going out, but where is it really going? Because it's not sitting in our savings account or it's not sitting in our bank account. So where did it go? So looking at the financials on a monthly basis is definitely something that I highly recommend for individuals to look at. Plus, I really believe that our financials, our bookkeeping reports are telling us a story. They're telling us the health of our business. They're telling us, do we need to set goals to bring in more clients or maybe bill more, make more money? We don't pay attention to those numbers close enough until it's too late sometimes and we've used up all our savings or we're in a, huge credit card debt. And that's because the whole time our company was running in red and we didn't take the time to look at it in a monthly basis. So definitely things like that are going to be huge, tax savings tools that you can do, but more closely on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know a lot of times on this podcast and on other podcasts for interior designers, they're talking a lot about making sure that we're staying on top of those finances, like understanding your bookkeeping. And a lot of times we talk about hiring out a bookkeeper as one of the first, hires that we might do as a business. But before even doing that, truly understanding what those numbers are and how to kind of do it yourself so that you, even if you're farming it out, that you're really taking control and taking charge of what those numbers are. So it sounds like you're echoing a lot of what we're taught already.
Yes.
So that we can have that financial literacy around the business for sure.
Yes, and if you can hire a bookkeeper, I'm all for it, right? But the bookkeeper still has to give you those reports on a monthly basis so that you make the time to review those reports on a monthly basis. I tell all my clients, small business owners, I say, hey, take the time, just like you would book a client on your calendar and say Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. I have a client. You need to book your business on your calendar and say, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., I can't meet with another client because I'm booked. I'm going to be reviewing my own financials, going over my own goals for the week, for the month, or whatever, right? With myself, with the partner, with the spouse, it doesn't matter. But I think that we need to schedule our own business into our calendar so that we truly take the time to review those reports, whether someone else is preparing them for you or you're doing them yourself, but the time needs to be blocked off.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a good point. I know that I'm definitely guilty of not doing that. I think it's really easy as interior designers or any kind of client-facing service business to want to take care of our clients first. Right. And then, just like a mom might forget to take care of herself when she's taking care of her kids. It's kind of the same concept that, our actual business falls to the wayside while we're trying to service our clients and make sure that we're creating these beautiful rooms and beautiful homes and beautiful projects. So yeah, but it is just as important as what we're
Sometimes
designing.
I think it's more important, right? It's like you said it, you brought it to health, right? You brought it to us as moms, multitaskers, and we want to do it all. I want to be there and do it all. But at the same time, if we're not in our best position to do so, we can't help everyone else. And if you're not taking care of your business and things fall apart, how are you going to have a business to go out and help others? How do you know that you're billing what you need to be billing in order to still continue to have a business or a roof over, an office space or whatever you may need to run your office? So it's very important to look at the health of your own business, the health of yourself, in order for you to keep charging forward.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So what would you say the financial benchmarks are that we should be tracking throughout the year?
For sure. Typical accounting, you always want to look at the money coming in and the money going out, right? But for me, the most important and one of the things that I've learned and I see with my clients is if I put you on a budget, none of us like budgets. Who likes to, cut back on expenses? I always tell my team, it's like, don't tell me I'm spending too much money. Tell me how much more money I have to be bringing in order for me to keep my, what I'm already doing. And I'm big on self-development. So I will buy books. I'm listening to different podcasts. I'm going to different conferences. I hire, coaches and I have a business coach and a life coach. And so there's a huge amount of investment that goes in self-development, things like this. But for me, it helps me stay sane. It helps me balance the business. It helps me balance my personal life. And so it's a necessity in order for me to be able to do what I'm doing. So instead of you telling me to cut back on it, tell me how many clients I have to go get and bring in. And so now I have a target. And so now I go out and I'm very intentionally looking for those individual clients that I have to bring in order for me to be making more money, for me to be doing what I'm doing. So that's one way to look at it. There's also profit first. There's a lot of times that when we do our bookkeeping and we do our accounting, we follow the traditional way. Profit first is a newer way of doing your bookkeeping and looking at your financials. But it's very important that you don't forget to pay yourself. For many years, when I would work with clients, they would bring in their profit and loss, and they would be like, okay, we brought in, $100,000 and $99,000 went back out in expenses. And I'm like, great, you're not in the red, but did you pay yourself? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, how are you surviving? Like, how are you paying for your bills, right? And so that's where they don't realize that they're using, maybe a loan, or maybe they're using, a spouse is in the picture, or maybe they're using savings or something like that, where all of a sudden one day that could potentially run out and the business never really turned around. And so they will start to suffer. The business will start to, not make enough, and you could potentially run out of money. And so we don't want that. Statistics show that a new business, usually will survive, 2 years. And then by year 5, they can close down. Why? And that's typically what you notice. People run out of their savings. They run out of, that credit card debt, or they have too much of it. So you see these patterns, and it's important that we look at all of that. How much cash are you really keeping in your business bank account to help you fund your next projects? How do people find you? Marketing is so important. It's such a big investment that you need to be making in your business. But sometimes we don't have the money to invest in such a thing, and yet it's such an important tool that we need to have in our businesses. So again, looking at those numbers, looking at what's coming in, looking at what's going out, and also looking at the return on your investment. So let's say I hire a marketing team. Well, I want to make sure that the next month I have more money's coming in, right? Why? Because we put a advertising campaign into motion, and that advertising campaign should be feeding and bringing us in more revenue. If it isn't, something's not working, and you and your marketing team need to go back together and figure out what happened, what didn't go right, and so that you could tweak it and continue to to put it out there, but that the revenue is also following that trend. So looking at those numbers, like I said, they're telling you a story. Enough of ignoring them. Let's take the time to really look at them and make the changes that we need to make to move forward.
That's awesome. I feel like you were preaching to the choir on every single one of those points. So actually, I was a Wingnut guest some episodes back, and one of the things I talked about was the importance of personal development. Yeah. And having that sort of like wellness practice around your life, so that you can be the best business owner that you can be. So I absolutely believe that's one of the most important investments. Also, the paying yourself. I also, I created a little mastermind group of interior designers local to where I am in the DC area. And one of the things I talk about is, when I meet other designers and I hear that they're not paying themselves, or they're paying themselves a wage that is absolutely not commensurate with a business owner, I'm like, well, then what's the point of having the business?
Yeah.
Like we're in business, obviously to, fulfill a creative vision and to be entrepreneurs and to, leave a mark in some way, but we're also in business to make money.
Right.
And I feel like that's very important, particularly as we start to think about hiring. Like, are you hiring at the expense of you no longer making money?
Right.
To me, we need to then rethink and relook at those finances. So yeah, and then also marketing. Also, I could go on all day about how important it is to invest in marketing. But yeah, so I'm also a Wingnut client, and Wingnut would feel no surprise in this. I would not rehire Wingnut if I wasn't making my money back on getting my clients from Instagram. So, and I am, so thank you, Wingnut. But yeah, that's absolutely an important part. I mean, what I love about Wingnut is they take that whole job off my plate of doing the social media.
Yes.
But at the same time, like if they weren't earning their keep and I wasn't making the money back, then it would be a silly investment. So,
I think that goes across the board, right? With, I do it a lot with, like I said, whether it's the marketing, even like I said, your financial planner, your bookkeepers, there's so many good things that happen when you start to really review those numbers, right? Your subscriptions, do you really need those? Why do you have them? Are you really utilizing those things? And if they're not, then let's cut them off, right? And so that's exactly why we look at the numbers on a monthly basis. And I recommend that you do so, is because whether it's your marketing, your coaching, subscriptions, whatever they are they really giving you that return on your investment? If not, let's move on. Everybody, what we realize, I think what we forget and we fail to realize is that it's our company and we are providing, financial resources to others as well, all these other companies and all these other services that we require. So let's make sure that we're getting what we're paying for, so that our money is going to where it needs to go and better use for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going through a rebrand in my company and having a new website built. And I brought in Wingnut at around the same time and had them do a strategy. In that strategy, I found it to be really comprehensive and actionable. I, like probably many designers, find Instagram to be such a bear. I understand that it is so important. It is a visual medium. What we do is so visual, but it's an entire full-time job. And with running a business and actually doing design, it was just really not feasible for me to keep up that pace with Instagram if I ever wanted to sleep. So working with Wingnut, they have taken all of that off of my plate, which honestly is the most invaluable piece of working with Wingnut. So in terms of tax strategies, how can we use these tax strategies to invest back into our business, which would ultimately fuel growth? Do you have anything specific any specific strategies that would really help to fuel growth for us?
Yeah, so I always like to, there's many different types of strategies out there depending on the business and all of that stuff, right? But what I always tell clients is you want to make sure that when you're talking to your tax planner or strategizing and looking for strategies, that you start with strategies that don't cost you money. And what I mean with that is, for example, a lot of the times people say, well, start an IRA, start a SEP, start a 401k. Those are great strategies, right? They're deferring tax. There's a tax saving component to it. But what's happening is money is being tied up in these retirement accounts that you can't use until you retire. Sometimes the health of our business is not ready for that. So what can we do to actually make sure that we save taxes, but that also it doesn't tie up the money? So two of the most popular ones that I always mention is going to be, like, for example, what they call the Augusta rule, renting your office to your corporation. What that does is you as an individual are renting something out to your corporation for, say, board member meetings or things like that. What happens is when your company pays you as an individual, you don't have to report that if it's done 14 or less times. Okay. So I say just do it once a month. So that's 12 times that you can pay yourself as an individual and not have to pay taxes. So what that means is your company gets a write-off and you as an individual keep the money in your pocket. So I like that because it didn't cost you anything, right? And the money stayed within you and your company. So that is one of the very first things we tell clients. If we can put this into play, let's put it into play. The other big one is, for example, when people hire their kids. Hiring your kids in your company is something that has become very popular on social media. There's a lot of processes that have to be followed, and you want to make sure that and for the IRS not to disallow this deduction, that you're following rules. Like, for example, that you're making sure that the child that you hire is doing the assignments and the job descriptions that you've assigned them. That there's a time card behind it, that there's, actual processes that are being followed, just like if they were a regular employee. You just don't want to pay your kids the money because it's a tax deduction. That's not how it works. You're paying them because they're delivering a service, and now the money goes into their personal bank account, right? And when the money's in their personal bank account, now they get to pay for their own sports or their own private school or whatever that is, but your company got a write-off for it. So as long as it doesn't reach the standard deduction, which right now it's about 14,000 some odd dollars for the year, then you want to then it's all tax free to the child as long as they're under 18, and your company got a write off. So again, the money is staying within the family, within the household, being as a tax deduction, being used for expenses that you normally wouldn't be able to deduct. You can't deduct your kids' sports. You can't deduct your kids' private school. But if you are utilizing some of that money for those purposes, then guess what? Now it's going to be tax free. So those are the first couple things that we want to implement, and make sure that you're following all the rules, make sure that you're ticking off all the boxes, so that if ever questioned or audited, that the IRS does not disallow it because you treated it like a true employee, like a true strategy, like a true deduction. And then that way the money stays within you and you get it tax free.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll definitely have to keep both of those things in mind. My oldest is 7, so I think I have a little bit of time until I can hire him. But let me know what those laws are.
So the IRS, the youngest child on an IRS tax case is 7 years old. So we usually say you don't want to hire them under 7 unless there's obviously projects. Let's just assume you do some sort of a ad campaign or a commercial. You hire them as a model and they're a baby, whatever, right? Then it's a project, it's an assignment, but not as as a month-to-month employee. But once they're 7 and under 18, if there's a certain task that you can assign them that they're really helping you with. For example, my daughter, since she was 14, she was helping us with our social media. She's a really good writer, so she would do some of the newsletters. So there's certain things that she would participate with, and she would get paid for it. And so that helped her now pay for her own expenses that before I'd have to fund and not get a write-off for it.
Interesting. I need to open a position for chief Lego creator.
Hey, maybe they're going to design something for you.
Exactly.
I don't know.
He's great. He's great at Legos. He really is. Awesome. Okay. So are there any deductions that we should be looking out for? I mean, I know you kind of mentioned some, the Augusta rule and then, the child hiring your children situation, but are there any other kind of typical deductions that we should always have in mind?
Yeah, of course. The IRS will say that anything that's ordinary and necessary for you and your business is going to be a deduction. So please don't compare yourself to your, fellow interior designer or your neighbor or a friend or somebody else, because everybody's business is going to be different and unique to yourself. So what you maybe have as a deduction may not be a deduction for someone else. And so, for example, when we have our own like podcasts and stuff like that, maybe we have our microphones or our headsets or a camera or whatever. But if you're not doing anything on social media and you go buy it because you have a hobby of playing video games or whatever, well, that, you know what I mean? There's no deduction there versus there will be for the person that's utilizing it for their social media content and stuff like that. So I tell clients, don't compare yourself. Just because so-and-so can't deduct it doesn't mean you can't. You just have to make sure that it fits the ordinary and necessary for you and your business, that there's a strong strong story behind it as why you feel that it's necessary for you and how it's going to turn around and make money. And the IRS will be like, all right, you get it as a deduction. Because what they want is they want you and your business to succeed. The IRS is scary. A lot of people fear the IRS, and I'm here to tell you, you don't need to fear them. You just need to make sure you have your stuff in order. And when you really look at what they want, they just want you to prove, why is this a necessary expense for you? I deal with different types of clients, but I know my real estate clients are always, coming up with really cool, unique stuff. And I'm like, hey, if this is helping you sell, or if this is helping you with your open house, then let's take it as a deduction. There is a really big, famous case with the IRS where they talk about the realtor, how she was able to get her yacht as a write-off.
Oh.
Well, she's showing and she is selling oceanfront properties. So she would get her clients on the yacht and be able to give them a view of their house from, the ocean side. Well, if you're in the desert, how am I going to make your yacht a write-off? It makes no sense, right? And so that's kind of what I tell clients is make sure it could be as an elaborate as a yacht. You just have to have a strong, story behind it as to why it benefits you, it benefits the business in order for you to be able to continue to make money that the IRS is going to tax anyways.
Okay, that's interesting. I've always been under the impression that there are sort of these hard and fast rules through the IRS, but it sounds like it's a little bit more, if you can create the narrative around it, that you can, make your case for it. So good to know.
That's what it is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're an interior designer, I'm sure a lot of the interior designers that are listening are working out of home offices. Are there any, deductions there that maybe we're not thinking of?
So when you have a home office, you will be able to take the deduction of, the percentage of whatever that square footage is. So typically you'll see 5%, 10%, depending on how big your office space is. And you'll be able to take anything and everything that household takes in order for you to take that deduction. So when I was working from home, I would be able to take my gardener, 10% of my gardener, 10% of, the maintenance of the home itself, because I had people coming in and the house needed to look nice in order for people to come in. I didn't want it to look run down and be like, where am I getting my taxes done, in a sketchy place? You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that if that is something that you're doing and you're running your business from your home, especially if, you have clients visiting, or maybe you have other colleagues visiting you, whatever it is, that the place is presentable, then you get to take 10% of those deductions. If anything and everything inside of it, for example, a desk or a computer, and it's used for your business only, then that's 100% deduction. So sometimes I get clients and they're saying, hey, I want to remodel my office. Is that going to be just 10%? I'm like, no, the actual what's inside of there that you're going to utilize for the actual business, you get to take 100% of that deduction. So what I tell clients is don't shy away from your deductions. We can nickel and dime this tax return. You just want to make sure that if it's going to fit that ordinary and necessary for you and your business.
Okay. Those are all great tips. So thank you so much. Before we get into the fire round, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think would be helpful to know?
I just want to, go back and remind everyone, especially in your industry, to treat your tax return, your finances, just like if you were designing something beautiful, something that represents you. It's, look at it bit by bit and make sure that you take the time to put pieces in there that are all going to fall within your goals and align with you and your business. Just like you design something and the turnout is great. I mean, even if you plan a wedding, I tell my wedding planners, if you're planning a wedding, if you're planning a camping trip, you make sure there's certain things in there that we don't forget to take certain things that, that it turns out as beautifully and as planned as possible. This is exactly how our tax return and our finances need to be treated, to make sure that at the end, they really fulfill our goals and that they line up with what we want and not whatever turns up.
Okay. Very helpful. I'm sure that you'll be getting many calls from our listeners that are like, I need some of that. So, so great. Thank you. Okay. So now that the interview has concluded, are you ready for the fire round?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. Sugey Piedra. What would the hashtag on your tombstone be?
I'm going to say it happens because I tell people something always happens, but there's always a solution for everything. So my kids are always like, Mom, you always say to stay positive. I'm like, well, life is crazy. Things will happen, but you know what? Everything will turn out one way or another. So I always tell them, it happens, baby. It's okay.
Ain't that the truth? Okay, so you're stranded on a desert island and you could have one food for the rest of your life. What would it be?
I would say pizza.
Okay, what kind of pizza? Just cheese or pepperoni? What do you want?
I think I'm gonna go with I really like a vegetable pizza with all the vegetables toppings. I don't care if it's broccoli and tomatoes and onions and all this stuff, but I really like putting all the toppings, the garden toppings on my pizza.
Ah, that sounds good. And probably healthy if you had to have it for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
good vitamins and minerals.
I get a little bit of both, right? The bread is bad, but the
Yeah.
vegetables are good.
Exactly. And then if you had to name one book that has impacted you either personally or professionally, what would that be?
I read We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. And that book changed me in a personal level, but also my business just, skyrocketed after that because I was able to really, really balance my home life and not be afraid of what my goals were. I think as a mom, sometimes I felt that I was a bad mom because I wasn't at home with the kids, making them dinner every single day. And I was focused on the business. But when I read this book, I just felt like I wasn't the only one. And I also felt that it gave me a really good sense of being able to balance everything and, make more time for the kids. And this is why also looking at our financials is so important because the more money that we make, the more people we can hire, the more people, help us, the more things we can outsource, which will allow us to spend more time with our family, with our kids, if that's what we want to do. So that book shifted a lot for me.
Awesome. I love that. I'll have to download that on my Kindle because I'm definitely in that season of life too, where it feels like the business is the focus and I feel like I'm not spending enough time with my kids, but
yeah.
It is what it is. We're also setting an example for them for what
that is true. We're just a different type of a mom now. I tell my kids, just give me grace. You don't have, grandma as your mom. I'm a different type of a mom. And this is, love me for who I am. And it's a learning curve, but the kids appreciate it. My son's now 22 and he's grateful for everything that, we've been through and developed. So it's nice.
All right. Well, before I let you go, Sugey, can you let everybody know where we can find you?
Yeah, so we're really active with our social media. So our Instagram is prominence.services. And of course, our website is prominencebusiness.com, where you can go and download some, useful tools that, you heard me mention that you could put into play into your business. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Everybody go ahead and check out Prominence. And again, I think you'll be getting some calls from here on out. So thank you again for your time. So, wow, that was a super helpful conversation with Sugey. I felt like I learned a lot personally for my own business, particularly if I ever want to write off a yacht and I become a real estate agent. But I thought it was really just very insightful to think about our businesses from a tax standpoint all year round, as opposed to just those first couple of months of the year, right before the April 15th deadline. But really thinking through how can we have the IRS work for us and have our tax strategies work for us so that our business can grow and we can ultimately make more money that we can reinvest back in the business. So I enjoyed speaking with Sugey and I learned a lot, and I'm sure that you did too. So if you'd like to learn more about LP & Co., you can go to my Instagram page at LP & Co Design, or you can find me online at lpandcodesign.com. Again, I'm Liz Potarazu, and thanks for joining us. So remember to get out there, get uncomfortable, and be great.